good morning from Brisbane, Australia. It's quite early here, so you'll have to forgive any sort of morning voice that I have on me. As mentioned, my name's Jade. I look after sort of the APAC region. Here's a little image of Jason and I. From a training point of view, my background is in learning and development. I've been in this space for around 15 years. And from an innovation point of view, I've worked sort of in productizing and developing new content, so whether that's e-learning or face-to-face for clients, and that's some of the expertise that I'm bringing along today. I have with me Jason, so the head honcho of global training. Jason, have we got you?
Hi, Jade. Yeah, thanks very much. I've been with KT for going on 6 years in August, but I have about a little more than 10 years in the product development and innovation space, both in the areas of supply chain and related to our training courses here at KT. And it's great to be with you today, Jade.
Wonderful, thank you. All right, so we've got a little bit to get through today. We want to take you guys through what is innovation thinking. So we'll kick in, and as mentioned, if you have any questions or any issues, please put them in the question to audio chat, and we can respond to them as we work through. So, innovation, it's such a hot topic at the moment. Innovation or creativity, depending on sort of the terminology that you use, it's listed by the World Economic Forum as one of the top 5 skills that we need to be really effective in our jobs in the next 5 years. So when we were researching this topic, there were, I think, 300 million Google results that came up when we put in the phrase innovation skills. So there is a ton of information out there, and it can be quite daunting. It's one of those sort of interesting skills that people think they've either got or they don't. So as professionals and as business leaders, we know that our business landscape is rapidly changing. There is a constant wave of digital upstarts that are here and are capitalizing on changes in technology, changes in customer behavior, and also like the availability of data to create innovative and customer-friendly alternatives to services that are currently offered. And innovations are happening in every single industry. And, you know, the obvious examples are things like Uber for transportation, Airbnb for hotels and hospitality. And if innovation is not here for you yet, it will be coming in your industry. And that is what we want to talk about today. So we want to share with you what we know about innovative thinking and hopefully help you prepare for the future of work. This webinar is sort of 30, 40 minutes long, and the high-level topics that we want to talk about are giving you an overview of what innovation is. I want to give you a couple of examples of innovation in practice so you can see and sort of unpack that. And then we want to give you some tools to help you sharpen your innovative thinking. So we're going to look at mindset, giving you a process, and a bunch of questions. Okay, so what is innovation? It's a great place for us to start today. It's often thought that innovation is coming up with new ideas. But as it turns out, it's really about making new connections between existing ideas and coming up with a solution for a problem. So for those of you who own a Dyson, anybody out there own a Dyson? I know I do. They're a pretty incredible vacuum. They're really powerful. So Dyson is a really great example of innovation. James Dyson took inspiration from a nearby sawmill near his hometown. He saw the high cone cyclones that spin dust out of the air by, I think it's called centrifugal force, and they expel waste out of these sawmills. He saw this and thought, I wonder what it could work like for a vacuum. I wonder if I could use that kind of thinking for a vacuum. And he used this idea to create the Dyson cyclonic vacuum, and that has really revolutionized vacuums. So that's one really basic example of innovation, and I think that's pretty exciting because it kind of makes innovation less scary. I think we can all connect, borrow, and sort of steal ideas and become innovators.
Right on. And I think, Jade, it's probably a good place to start is to ask a question to the audience. By the way, I don't have a Dyson. I can't afford one, but they're awesome vacuums. And in my experience working in innovation and clients, I see that so many people are just intimidated by innovation, especially working on projects. And so we want to test that a little bit and see what top challenges are for folks. So I have a poll question up that hopefully you guys can find in the control panel around, I think it's on the right side of the screen, might be the bottom, and choose one of the answers. So what's the biggest challenge? Lack of innovation skills, lack of top management support, fear of the unknown, that's sort of that we're all worried about being wrong, feeling of criticism and what if I fail, and lack of a reward system to support innovation. So there's 4 questions, and I see that the answers are coming in. Jade, we had a question from the audience, which I think is a good chance to answer it while the votes are coming in. Someone asked what kind of products that you and I have been involved in developing over the years. And specifically, I've been involved developing a mobile application for Kepner-Tregoe. I'm currently working on some cloud-based software. I've worked on workshops and training products, and in my previous role, I've worked on launching services for supply chain companies to more quickly distribute goods. And I've found that lack of management support has been a huge issue around innovation for me, if I had to answer that based on my experience. What about you?
Yeah, so mine has been a lot in the learning and development space. I know that I worked at a telco, and me and my team were part of a project to innovate how we delivered induction training. I remember the induction program originally was about 8 weeks in length, and we were able to bring the face-to-face component down to, I think it was 2 weeks in the end. So for us, that was a huge project and a new way of passing on capability to people, and that involved things like e-learning, fishbowl activities, etc. So there was a whole bunch of stuff that went into that, but that is a really good example of an innovation that we developed. And I think maybe what that highlights, thanks Mark for that question, is innovation doesn't have to be that you create Uber. Innovation is making something better within your respective environment, so for your end user. And if your end user is a business unit or it's learners on a training course, whoever your end user is, it's about giving them a better experience. So don't be daunted. You don't have to create Uber. You can be innovative in any way.
Thanks, Jade. And so the votes have come in. We got a lot of votes. Top management support here. Let me stop voting. So hopefully you can see the results. Lack of top management support was the #1 item that folks voted on, about 30%, and about 25% said lack of skills. So the one thing we can help with a little bit today, Jade, is to talk about the skills around innovation, because that's something that you can improve on for sure. And lack of top management support, well, that's not something we can solve today. And quite frankly, if anyone on the call wants to come and help us here with that, that's great too. Lack of management support is what I faced in my career as a significant challenge, and that comes from a resource perspective, that comes from a funding perspective, and for the ability to mess up and fail are all reasons why management needs to get more on board to support innovation. Jade, anything else you'd want to highlight around the polling?
No, I think those numbers look pretty common. So we thank you for your contribution there. And lack of top management support, as Jason said, it's not something we're going to cover today, but there is a lot of information around, I guess it's change management, what you want to look at to get management support around innovation. So that might be another webinar for us.
Oh, good, another webinar. Perfect. Okay, Jade, I'm going to take over the control here and click to the next slide. So it's always sad to see a picture of Steve Jobs today because of the fact that we've lost him and just how unbelievably creative and innovative he was. Today's place that I would like to start is around defining the difference between innovation and invention. A lot of people use the words innovation and invention as synonyms, and I don't think they are. There's a big difference. to me, you could really define them in a couple of different ways. One way would say that invention is about creating something new for the first time, while innovation is about kind of improving and making a significant contribution or improvement to an existing product or service. But I was just reading an article in Wired magazine, and they said that invention is making a thing, like a tangible thing, while innovation is changing behavior through something. I kind of liked that one, where innovation is really about changing behavior. If we actually look at this Apple example, the iPhone itself was not an invention. There had been phones before, there had been touch screens before, there had been texting before. The iPhone was an innovation. It changed the way people interacted with each other and the way that people interacted with devices. And then the iPad was an innovation as well. That really just made a bigger iPhone. But think about the way it changed mobile computing. And so I think it's important to understand the difference. We're going to talk a lot about innovation, which is trying to change things, improve on things. And so you are really meeting a customer need, a client need, or an end user need, and changing their behavior. This quote is great from Steve Jobs, but creativity is just connecting things. And I relate that to innovation, like you're trying to connect people to things so they do it a little bit differently. And so we thought that was a great quote to share. All right, so Jade, back over to you.
Okay, so thanks, Jason. What I wanted to now do was give 4 examples of innovation, share with you very briefly how they were developed and the problem that they solve for their user. And this will hopefully help you to see how innovation can work. So the first example you can see here on the screen, some of you might be familiar with this. This is called the life straw, what the kids have in their mouth there. And you might have heard of this, you might even have one. The idea for the life straw was developed when innovators from a company called Vestergaard asked, how might we give anyone access to clean and safe water? Vestergaard were doing work in third world countries and knew that this was a big problem. So getting clean water to people to drink and bathe in was a real issue for them. The life straw, which you can see here, was innovated from a similar product that was developed to filter the guinea worm from waterways. Now, I'm not going to go into huge detail on the guinea worm. It is a terrible, terrible parasite. It lives in waters in some of Africa and Asian countries. Roughly, in a nutshell, residents would drink or bathe in the water. They would take on board the worm. The worm would live within the host and reproduce. And then it was time for the worm to reproduce. It would cause discomfort for its host, and they would have to immerse themselves in water to relieve the pain. This would then release the eggs into the waterway, and the cycle would begin again. So you can imagine for a country that doesn't have a filtration system for their water, it would be an epidemic. It would just be a continual, painful, horrible parasite these people had to deal with. So the guinea worm filter was a cloth filter that was developed to allow people to filter water before they drank it or cooked with it or bathed in it. And it was a really successful product, so successful that the innovators from Vestergaard wondered, could we use this technology and evolve it to make a drinking device that would remove all microbiological contaminants and make virtually any water safe for people to drink? And that's what they did. So I think it was in 2005, the life straw was developed, and now people in these developing countries can drink water safely. And it's, even commercialized to people like hikers and the Defence Force now. You can buy these at, I think, hiking stores. So the problem that the life straw solved was it allowed people to safely drink water anywhere, anytime, without the need for a complicated or bulky, expensive filtration system. And so you can see this is an example of an innovation. We've taken something somebody else has come up with and we've put a new spin on it, and now we've got an amazing life-saving innovation here. All right, the next example I have, I don't know if you guys will know of this one, a little thing called Google. You might know of this. It wouldn't be an innovation webinar without Google, right?
Look at that old interface. That interface is so old. That's awesome. Yeah.
This is it. Yeah, it's pretty cool, right? This is the original. So it was it was born, I suppose is the word, in January 96, and it was based on a research project by Larry Page and Sergey Brin when they were PhD students at Stanford University. So I don't know if you know the story, but at the time there were other search engines around. So this 96 is sort of 1 year after the internet was commercialized in the States. So search engines were relatively new. These conventional search engines, how they worked, now I'm not an IT guy, so just bear with me on my explanation here, but how they worked was they ranked results by counting how many times the search term appeared on the page. So if you were selling shoes, for example, and somebody, we call it Google, but somebody searched for the word shoes, the more times the word shoes appeared on your page, the better your page would rank. So if you imagine this would be a horrible experience for a searcher. You would end up going to a page and all over this page would be the word shoes. So in terms of finding really sort of minute information, it would be really difficult. So Page and Brin, their research idea was, how do we find a better system to analyze and rank websites by relevance? And what they did, they innovated their search engine to determine a website's relevance. And they looked at criteria including the number of pages and the importance of those pages that link back to the original site. So I'm sure it's much more complicated than that, but basically it was around relevance rather than volume of search terms. And this really changed the way that we search for information. I don't know about you, Jason, but most of my presentation here today came from Google, and I would be lost without it.
You're not supposed to admit that, Jade, I don't think, are you?
Hey, I'm an innovator. We borrow, don't we?
That's a really perfect segue. Well done.
Thank you, thank you. So the problem that Google solved was a poor search result due to ineffective ranking. They provided better, more relevant web search results for users. And, this is just a really great example to show, how innovation can make things better. So this was back in the 90s, but, they've really revolutionized. And now Google's, you can look up in the dictionary and Google is a term because it's the gold standard in search, right? All right, so that was sort of a service example. The third example is Netflix. We all know this. It's even coming into learning and development. We're hearing of the Netflix of learning. Not everyone will know this, but Netflix was originally a postal subscription DVD company. So you could pick a DVD, order it, and they would deliver it to you. At the time, that was probably pretty cool, but I'm not sure in the States what it's like, but over here in Australia, we had things like Blockbuster Video or DVD, and they are all gone now. So they realized that potentially DVDs wouldn't be around forever, and they were looking into a more sustainable business model. And what they did is they looked at their end users, so people who watch TV or people who are entertained via a TV or a device, and they looked at what problems they had with the current way that they consumed entertainment. And they found that people who like to watch TV, the reason they did that, it was for relaxation and entertainment. And the problem people had was if they worked late or if they had something on, they would miss their TV program that they wanted to watch. So people were really at the mercy of the TV network, and they had to watch what they were told to watch when they were told to watch it. And the question that Netflix were asking was, how might we give customers complete control over their entertainment viewing options? And this is the solution that they came up with. And it's to provide a streaming service where people can find programs that they like, watch them when they want, and they've really just disrupted how we consume entertainment. So this is the third example. And then my final example, you'll all be really familiar with, is Uber, of course. Now, Uber really is an interesting story as well. I'm not sure if you guys know where this came from. I read this actually very recently, but it was founded in 2009 by Garrett Camp and Travis Kalanick. It started as an idea. What if you could request a ride from your phone? And I think it originated in Paris. The guys were trying to get a cab. They couldn't get a cab, and they must have had a few drinks that night. They decided, imagine if we could just push a button in our phone and a really cool black town car would come and pick us up. That was their original idea. So they sort of developed that, and they found that their friends were saying, oh, cool, I really want to be involved in this. How can I get a car at the touch of a button? And from there, they evolved their idea from sort of the prestigious and luxury town car service that they envisioned to one that allows now, as we know it, car owners to make money when and where they want and connect them with riders who need an affordable ride all at the touch of a button. So they've been really successful because of the problem that they solved. And if you can remember, before Uber, the main comparable option was to take a cab or ask mum for a lift, right? But the problem with cabs, and this is my experience, is there wasn't a great customer experience. They were often expensive. You could get ripped off. They don't put the meter on and they tell you they're going to charge you more. You had to wait a long time. You didn't even know when you were going to be picked up, if you were going to be picked up. So there was a whole bunch of problems around the customer experience, and you were at the mercy of the driver. Uber really did remove these problems, and now they've created a whole new job market in the process. To the point that if you get a poor service, you can rank your driver, and if you're a terrible passenger, they can rank you. So it's that user pays sort of social aspect of Uber that makes it really successful. So these are 4 examples that have solved real customer problems, and they were based on something that already existed, and they've really changed how we live. Now, we're not all going to create an Uber in our lifetime. It's one thing to have an idea. I mean, I have so many ideas on a Friday night when I'm sitting around with my friends having dinner, but I don't productize all of them. So what these guys do is they have these ideas and they work really hard to make them reality. We don't have to create an Uber, but we can create innovations in our everyday life. And what we want to do today is unpack some of the fundamentals that these innovators use so we can apply this thinking in our own work and day-to-day lives.
Yeah. So, Jay, I'm going to kick it back to Jade in a couple of minutes to have her take you through the innovation process a little bit more deeply. But the one thing that we wanted to think about before we get there is skills. And from a skills perspective, there was a question at the very beginning, like, can innovation be taught? And how much can we develop as an innovator if we learn the right process? Jade and I are very confident that you can start building innovation skills by learning the process, which Jade will talk about, but by practicing them, being given the space to try it, and really making sure that you can be an experienced innovator by working on those skills. It's a great image. So before I go back to Jade, let's do one more poll. I popped it up on your screen. You should be able to see it there. From a skills perspective, what are the key skills that we need to be effective innovators? And there's 5 examples. So asking good questions, something that I'll actually come back and talk about at the end. Making observations of users and customers, experimenting and testing, identifying worthy problems to solve, and being customer focused. Going back to my experience, well, there's 2 things. I'm going to come back and talk about asking good questions, but there's never been a good innovator who isn't able and willing to ask the right questions of themselves, of their clients, of their end users. So that's where I would start for sure. But the other thing I've learned recently through working a lot with Jade on innovation is really a combination of being customer focused and making observations of the customer. Man, that's just so critical. If you can go and literally touch, observe, see, and smell the ways that users are doing things differently than you would expect them to, it's a fascinating experience to drive a ton of thoughts about innovation. And as the votes are kind of coming in here, making observations of users and customers is the number 1 result right now with about 35%. And Jade, I think you would be pretty pleased with that result, considering what we now know about design thinking and what you're about to talk about.
Absolutely. So I think, yeah, my pet favorite from an innovation point of view is definitely observations of users and customers. And we'll talk about that a little bit more shortly. And, you know, it is a trick question. I shouldn't say this, but all of these things are really important when it comes to being an innovator. It's just sort of your view on what's sort of the most important, I suppose.
Yeah. While you really need all those skills, some are harder and some are easier. I mean, I see that only experimenting and testing only has about 5% of the vote. That's a hard one to do. Really good experiments and testing are hard, but you got to be good at them to really understand, is the thing that you're thinking about innovating, does it have play with your end user, with your client, with your customer? And can you do it cheaply and affordably and quickly in an agile way? Something that you know, really takes some experience in doing that. It can be a lot of fun too, but it's hard. All right, I'm going to stop the voting, and let's get into the meat of the presentation. And Jade, that's where you come in. So you want to take us into the process?
Sure, thank you. I'll move forward here. All right, so for those of you who asked, somebody said, great examples. Now tell me, how can we think innovatively? All right, we're getting there. Sorry for the suspense. So how can we all improve our ability to be creative and improve our innovative thinking capacity? For those of you on the line who know KT, you know that we are known for rational thinking. And innovative thinking or innovative problem solving is something that we're doing more and more with clients. So what we find is not every single problem is about finding root cause, and more of our customers need help understanding sort of human-centered problems or how to design a solution that creates a better experience for the user. So we're doing more of that stuff, which has led for the formation of our innovation team and for us to do more work in this space. So there's 3 key focus areas, and honestly, like I said, innovation is huge. So you can go and find more and more information, but this is sort of a bit of a summary of the journey we've been on and the things that we've found to be important. So the 3 key focus areas that we want to look at are, first of all, having an innovation mindset. So this is, you know, tricky. It's a tricky shift, especially for really analytical thinkers. So we're going to give you some tips here on how you can change your mindset to one that helps you be more innovative. Secondly, have a process. Obviously, KT loves a process, and it wouldn't be a KT webinar without one. So we've sort of borrowed, what is it Steve Jobs said? We've stolen things or borrowed things from other great innovative companies, and we've put together a mud map or a process that you guys can use if you want to put together a bit of a simple innovation. And thirdly, asking good questions. So this will help you get you and your team thinking creatively and thinking outside of the box. So Jason will present this information as it's sort of like a passion area for him. So we'll get to that shortly. All right, mindset. So this sounds like a big ask, right? You might be thinking either I'm innovative or I'm not. And this is kind of true. Some people have more of a natural ability to think creatively than others, but we can all at least contribute to innovation. And it starts by having the right mindset. So we've found that you can improve your creative thinking in sort of by these sort of 4 activities. And you don't have to do all of them, but they're ways to help you think differently. And the first one we call creative procrastination. So our brain is often at its most creative when it's working on a specific problem. So, sorry, when it's not working on a specific problem. This is why we have really great ideas when we're like driving to work, or we're doing something sort of routine or mundane, or in the shower, right? So when you need a fresh approach to an issue, focus on it briefly to get the situation clearly defined in your mind, and then put it aside and let your subconscious mind do the work. This is where novel ideas come from. Your mind, your subconscious mind, will continue to work on the task while you focus on other mundane activities, like when you're sleeping, for example. I know people who take a notepad to bed, and in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, they'll, you know, spring out of bed and have to write notes down because their brain's been working while they've been sleeping. So new solutions can naturally bubble up to consciousness after this form of what we call creative procrastination. So be prepared to capture things during this sort of creative procrastination mindset. The next one is to de-stress. So things that help you reduce stress. So for me, exercise helps me reduce stress. I like to take a break in the day. If I'm working on a big project, go for a walk or a run, or meet somebody, go for a walk around the river, for example. It helps to stimulate creative thinking. So some research has found that, walking, and it says particularly in a natural setting, helps us improve creative thinking. University of Kansas researchers found the greatest benefits come from exercise that isn't too taxing or mentally demanding. So don't go and try and do a true grit army adventure exercise. That's probably going to be a little too strenuous for you. It's sort of the low impact walking and jogging. It helps you sort of be creative and releases sort of the right endorphins to get you in the right mindset. The third thing we look at is being social. So this is a really great one. Spending time talking and socializing with others can boost activity in the brain's exploration system. So whether it's for yourself or others, you should encourage your team to hang out with other people. You could have sort of social events or create spaces where people can bump into each other over coffee. If you work remotely, so I often work remotely if I'm not with a customer, I'll have conversations with people in my team and we bounce ideas off each other, sort of, infrequent little catch-ups. We use things even like Skype Messenger. That can be a way of being social. So social doesn't mean you have to be face-to-face. And it can also be broader than the people you work with. So catching up with an old colleague over a coffee, talking to them about what you're doing can give a new perspective. So that social aspect can help you think outside the box. And it's fun too, right? Getting to be social with people.
Jade, is this what you're doing all day?
Whoops, I forgot you're on the phone, Jason. Maybe.
Oh,
no,
I'm still on the phone?
Creative. I'm being creative and innovative, Jason. Yeah, so there's another point. Watch out for your boss when you say that, right? All right, and then the final one, which links into being social, is teaming up. So neuroscience research shows that when we put teams together, it really helps with innovation because we all have natural differences in our brain system on how we focus and explore ideas. Some people are more effective when they work in a team. So you can kind of, there are different tools as well. So there's something called the alternative use test. We can pop that note somewhere for you guys to see. It can help you identify innovators. So there's this little test called alternative use test, and it helps you identify, I think the test basically says you come up with as many uses as possible for common household objects. It helps engage parts of your brain that you don't normally engage. So for example, one of the tests they do is think of as many ways as you can to use a brick. And so people, say things like a doorstop, etc. But then other people come up with really wacky out there ideas, and that can be a really great way to sort of shake off conventional thinking and free you up to think differently. So they're the 4 tips I wanted to give you around helping you shift from sort of a fixed analytical mindset to a more creative and innovative mindset and help set you up with innovation. The next topic is process. So who here feels like this when they're told to do something creative? I love this. And I've kind of hidden some of the words that were on there because they weren't appropriate for this slide. This can be how innovation can feel for people, right? So fear not, we've looked at what the best companies do and we've summarized for you, and we're going to give you a bit of a process today. So the first thing, again, if you know KT, you're not surprised to see the terminology define the problem. There are a variety of innovation or design thinking processes that you can use, and this is what we've sort of curated from around the place. So the first thing, define the problem. Steve Jobs, who was sort of a master at defining a clear product vision, when he set out to build the iPod, he framed the problem as 1,000 songs in my pocket. So that phrase helped him, it wasn't about the technical specifications, but it was about the overall approach. So that didn't constrain him too much in terms of what he was trying to deliver. Our friends at IDEO, so most of us have been accredited in IDEO design thinking. So they start by asking a question, how might we? So for the Steve Jobs example, it might be, how might we put 1,000 songs in my pocket? So we're not jumping to, how can I create a device that does X, Y, and Z? By keeping our problem definition broader, it lets people come up with innovative ideas around coming up with a solution. So first thing is we need to be clear what the problem is that you're trying to solve and come up with a nice big broad statement to let people be creative within that space. The second thing we do, which Jason talked about early on, is observe users. We sometimes in KT land, we call this a day in the life of. So this is, the people who are either doing the job or using the service. What we want to do is see how they use the thing or perform the service and make actual observations. And I really want to highlight the word observe here, because when we ask someone how they do something or why they do something, they can often miss out vital details. But if you watch them, you can see the things that they often can't articulate. And as you make observations, you can ask them why they do things in a certain way, and this will give you clues to problems that they have. And this leads beautifully into the next step, which is looking for workarounds. Workarounds are gold in terms of finding an innovation project. Now, a workaround indicates an unmet or unarticulated need. You'll find workarounds during observations, but it's important to really call these out. So people will create workarounds almost without realizing to make their job or life easier. And if you can find a workaround, you've found an unmet need. So I'm going to show you some really basic examples here of some workarounds from different projects that people did. So you can see on the left-hand side, a pile of boxes stacked up and some monitors on what would normally be a shelf. This would be sort of an example of somebody who didn't want to sit in their chair and they found another way, which is, the evolution of the standing desk. Up the top, we've got a lady who's sort of holding her phone to her shoulder and crutching her neck. This would indicate that this person needs to type while they're on the phone. So this would tell us that providing this person with a headset, for example, would be a huge help to this person in their role. Hair ties holding cupboard doors shut. So if you've got children, this indicates that, why are we trying to keep the door shut? Probably because the kids keep getting in there. And obviously there are products available now, but these are the kinds of things that you can observe to help you find a workaround for somebody. Up the top, we've got a bottle used to extend the water spout. So if you think of like a little kid not being able to reach all the way up to wash their hands, somebody's cut I think it's like a Johnson's baby shampoo bottle so that the kid can actually reach the water. And the bottom right, this one's for my mum. I remember being a little kid and going to swimming, and Mum would give us sunscreen and we would lose it and we would waste it and it cost a fortune. So way back sort of however many years ago, I don't want to describe, but when I was sort of 8, Mum would get her old deodorant bottles and put sunscreen in them and send me to school with those. I know they're now a product and my mum could have been a millionaire, but she never really did anything with it other than solved her problem. So there's some really basic examples of workarounds that can lead you towards a potential unmet need and a really good innovation. And then the final thing, and I know we sort of in the poll, this didn't come up as a highly weighted, what's the word for it? It wasn't weighted as highly as some of the others, but rapid prototyping is really important. Once you've defined the problem and the solution, you know what the needs are for the user, you've discovered some improvements, you then want to move into rapid prototyping. And the word rapid is really important. So you want to be able to quickly prototype and test your idea to see any failures and quick improvements that you can make. It should be iterative, and you should collaborate with end users so you can get real-time feedback. An innovation company, their name is Inventium. They're really amazing. It's Dr. Amber Imster who runs this business. She uses a $100 rule for prototyping. So what she says is it's got to cost less than $100 or you can't do it. So it helps you fail fast and safely, and it's a really good last step in the innovation process. This example on the screen here comes from IDEO. I think it's actually out of the course that we did with the guys. You can see on the left, this is a prototype. So this was developed for a surgeon who needed a new drill, and the IDEO guys basically worked with the surgeon with stuff they had laying around and said, here, what do you think of this? The surgeon was able to say, look, I need a shorter handle, that's too long, it'll get in the way of the surgery. I need a longer nozzle because it needs to reach X, Y, Z. So they were able to really quickly, on the fly, come up with a rough prototype and then take it to actually develop it. Otherwise, this could have cost hundreds of thousands of dollars in R&D to get to this point. So this is the huge value of rapid prototyping. So I'm going to now hand to Jason, and he'll finish on his topic of asking great questions.
Great, and I love the prototyping connection between the skills poll we did and how it's not something that people are always thinking about with skills, and how important it is to do cheap prototypes. And it's a skill you can learn, and it's something you got to practice. So in terms of questions, the problem with innovation is that we are so often prone to act out of habit. And when we act out of habit, we just start doing instead of being curious and asking. And the pressure to keep moving forward is everywhere. Your boss wants to see the next amount of progress, the ROI on your project. And we need to really admit that we are human and we don't know everything. And we got to make sure that we start asking questions that are going to help you understand your end user, your client more effectively. In the right state of mind, we got to start asking questions. In the wrong state of mind, you're bottled up and you're just trying to get stuff done, and that's not particularly effective. You got to be comfortable with not knowing, and that's okay. Ask naive questions without feeling self-conscious. A beginner's mind is open to all possibilities. An expert thinks they know everything. Here's a great example. I have a 3-year-old. 3-year-olds ask the most incredible questions. They ask questions without assumptions. They ask questions with no fear, and they just want to know. And if I could just document the number of truly insightful, interesting questions that my 3-year-old has asked, it really is amazing. Now, the 3-year-old questions goes from, Daddy, why do you have eyes? Well, so you can see. Well, why do you need to see? Well, you need to see so you can look around and see stuff. But why? And it's okay. Then at some point, it kind of runs its course. But those questions are so critical for just being naive and asking questions. And the question that Jade has been asking over and over again during this presentation is, how might we? How might we? And then define a question. How might we is so powerful, so open-ended. It allows you to gather information about some question you're trying to answer. And how you might be, might is just one of those open-ended questions, like how are you going to is too specific, but how might gives you a chance to be creative and think about it. And how is kind of one of those ultimate open-ended questions. Did you want to jump in, Jade?
I was just going to say, how might we is also, we've worked with lots of different innovation companies, and that's, the catch cry for IDEO. So how might we, and then tagging a question on the end, like you said, it just sets your mind up to be innovative and open.
Good. Now, I'm going to ask you a poll question. Oh, sorry, I had 3 here. So let me just actually cover these. My apologies. So how might we, could you ask, dramatically reduce complexity, or cut price by 80%, or challenge truisms. There are so many good how might we questions that you really can just expand your thinking and truly just think like a 3-year-old. Although, to a point, not like my 3-year-old. All right, so here's our poll question. What questions do you ask to help drive innovative thinking? You ever talk to someone and they were just so in their own thoughts and not thinking outside of where they need to be innovative? What questions have you asked before to help drive innovative thinking? The one question that we talked about, how might we, is a really good one. But the other thing is I like to say, Jake, if you put yourself in the client's shoes, what would you feel like, or what would it be like? And that's a matter of like being empathetic to the person that you're trying to relate to. If you put yourself in those shoes, how might you react or feel differently? Can be a powerful way to drive it. What kind of questions do you like asking?
Yeah, so if people want to, in the questions for audience box, if we're not going to do a poll on this one because we want you to be able to provide free text, we'd love to know what kinds of questions you guys ask to help drive innovative thinking. And we'll give
Should
you
have mentioned that, right, not the poll, yeah, right in the chat box. Yeah, thanks, Jade, sorry about that.
So to your point, some of those questions that we looked at on the last slide, the challenge truisms, I think is a really great one. So if you work in a business where, you know, oh, we can't do that because this is how we've always done it, challenging truisms is a really great way to get people out of their comfort zone. And a simple question, so if somebody says you can't, a simple question can be why. 5 whys, we teach that a lot at KT. Asking 5 whys, you might get to a point where you break them and you are then able to think beyond their sort of stuck mind, I suppose. We have one question
go ahead,
here. It says, how might we inquire, experiment, and collaborate? Great. How might we inquire? I like that. That's really, really great.
There's another one. What if you had to start from scratch with nothing but a clean slate? I also like to ask, what if we made you king or queen for a day, right? That's like kind of the clean slate question that can be really effective.
I like, what if we fired the boss? What could we do? Like, what if the boss didn't exist? I know that's a terrible, it's a terrible one.
Jade, how often do you ask yourself that question?
Never, Jason. It's a good one. If money was not an issue, how might you address the problem? What frustrates you? Oh, they're coming in so fast I can't keep up. What frustrates you doing your job using a product? What would make it easier? Somebody saying, I use PO lateral thinking. What do you want to eliminate, adapt, combine, sustain, rearrange, reverse, wishful thinking? These are fantastic. So we'll probably try and share these back with the group. There'll be, I believe this is available as a download, this presentation. So we'll try and share some of these because there's some really great questions coming through.
Love it. Yeah, Jade, why don't you wrap up, and if we have a minute at the end, we can send some of these out too.
Yeah, keep adding them, guys, and we'll wrap up the presentation. So in a nutshell, we're at the end of the presentation, and the sort of 3 things we want you guys to take away today are around, first of all, shifting your mindset. So you need to shift your mindset when you're working in an innovation space. This is going to open you up to thinking in an unconstrained way and let you be creative and let new ideas fly. Secondly, use a process. So whether it's the one that we just showed you today or another one, you can Google them, you can Google IDEO's innovation process, whatever you like, but you need to have a process. It's easy to spin your wheels and get really stuck, but if you follow a process, you're able to move to the next step and you'll become more confident and better at innovating. And finally, as Jason's described, you want to ask good questions. So this is one of the best things we can do as leaders to empower our people. And using questions that we provided, the ones that you guys have provided, we'll share those, do a Google search, put together like a little toolkit of innovation questions, and that'll help you if you get into a creative rut. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. That's what we wanted to share with you today. We hope that you got a lot of value out of today's presentation. I know we did. Thank you for all of those fantastic questions that you sent through. We're going to steal those because that's what we do as innovators. We want to leave you, whoops, hope I haven't gone too far, sorry I went too far. We want to leave you with a quote by the amazing Elon Musk. He's a real innovative disruptor, and yeah, thank you. I'll pass back over to Jason now.
Great. Yeah, and Elon Musk is just, I mean, he's borderline crazy, right? But like when you were to sit down and ask him about innovation, I mean, it's really that is his mindset all day long. It's pretty remarkable. My last connection back to what we talked about in the first webinar and what we're going to talk about next. So we started off a couple of months ago with disruptive thinking. Thanks to Vina, again, who had joined us from Western Digital, T-Gile, who kicked us off there. And then Jade today talked about innovation and how innovative thinking is critical. And then WebEx3, I'm going to talk about critical thinking. That's something that's near and dear to KT's heart. We're going to take a new spin on it and talk about how problem solving, decision making, and the key critical thinking skills that you'll need will help you prepare for the future of work. And I hope you'll kind of see the connection between the three as we kind of move forward. There's still so many good questions coming in, Jade. This is so cool. We got to figure out a way. We'll come up with a way to send these out and make sure we share those. But if you have more great questions to drive thinking, please, by all means, send them in. Okay, so I think that's it for me. Jade, great job. Thank you so much.